I've got an enclosure that needs to be kitted out and something here that I'm going to use to do it. This is my tank that I've got in my bedroom that I made 6 months or so ago. It's grown in now. It's a little bit messy. It does need tidying up. But as you can see, what I've done is created a kind of bonsai underwater. The top part there is made with marimo moss balls, which is effectively an algae that groups together in a ball. You can see some on the ground there and around the tank. You'll have to excuse all the shrimps in here. They're just absolutely exploded. I started with 5 and then they started having little shrimplets, and I felt guilty because these guys, the tetras, kept eating them and I felt awful. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to save all the little shrimplets. So I kind of collected them all up painstakingly and put them in a different tank. But then I kind of regret it because I ended up with like 30 shrimps. Although they do keep the tank clean, so. But yeah, the plan for me now is to see if I can replicate something like this with the marimo moss balls in a praying mantis enclosure. I just don't know how the moss balls will live because obviously they live underwater primarily, so I'd imagine they dry out, but even if they dry out it might still look quite cool. You probably can't see him very well. Get out of the way. But look at the back, there's my vampire shrimp munching away. Such a cool guy. I'll have to try and get some better shots of him because he's awesome to look at. So for the tree I'm going to use this twisted hazel. I love this stuff, it's so good for enclosures. I just got it out of my dad had some in the garden that we stripped off and then I boiled and baked it just to clean it up. But it's so good for enclosures because it's just so gnarled and twisted and looks really good and gives the mantises plenty of little hanging spots. But I think that could make a good tree if I do some DIY on it and snip it down a bit and make it, maybe glue a few branches together. And then we've got our moss balls here. They've been sitting in water for a while though, so I think I'm going to have to clean my balls. Nobody likes dirty balls, and I don't know what might be growing on my balls, to be honest, so I'll give them a bit of a clean and a scrub as best I can. Hopefully they've kept their colour, because I want nice green balls. These are looking a bit slimy. I'm still getting plagued by fungus gnats as well. Look at that. That's from like 3 days ago. Look how many are on there. They have absolutely exploded and it drives me mental because they constantly fly in your face because they like the CO2 in your breath. I've got various methods of attack going on at the moment for these because if I don't do something about it, they're just going to overrun this whole room. I've scrubbed and rinsed my balls and they're looking a bit better now actually. You can see the green in them really well. It is a bit of an experiment. I don't know if they're going to stay green. But I'm thinking if they do, this kind of thing would actually make an awesome kind of ground. If I, because you can manipulate these. So if I kind of chop it and almost lay it like a mat, that would look really cool because it will just look like grass. But I don't know if it will survive. So I guess we'll try this as an experiment and see how they survive. And then from there, maybe I'll get some more of them. I've got a basic layout now of how I want the tree to look. I've kind of chopped the bits down and used some acrylite glue to thicken out some of the branches just to have a nice thick skeleton for the tree before I add the boughs in. And I think I might just glue the base to a stone to hold it in place. Clay balls. Mesh layer. So now the glue's dried, I've chopped it down a little bit just so it's not so tall and fits in the enclosure better. And I'll affix it onto this just to give it some stability when it's in the enclosure. A nice heavy flat stone there should hold it in place. There you go, I've just sealed that with cyan acrylite glue. I don't know how well that will adhere to stone. Should be alright though, it just needs to have a bit of a grip there. I think that should be enough, and then while that dries I'll put some moss over the mesh there just to help with the drainage too. Just went to collect my bag of moss, and if you can see it, there's so many fungus gnats in there. Honestly, they're just getting everywhere now. I can't even open it because they're all just going to go flying out and repopulate in here. So annoying. So I got a bit of moss out of here, but you know what I'm going to do? Put this bag in the freezer and hopefully it'll kill them off and freeze any larvae that's in there. But they do seem impervious to anything I'm trying at the moment. So now our tree's all set, ready to go. We can start adding what would be the leaves or mock leaves. These, my balls are actually really easy and malleable to split open. So what I'm going to do is take my balls, sort of break them down a little bit into smaller chunks that will kind of better suit this, because obviously these are a bit too big. Some of them might be okay on the top, but we want some smaller ones too. So we'll split these up a bit before we attach them onto the tree. So now we've got our moss balls and we've split the areas and broke them down into the size that's a bit more manageable for the, what's it called? I don't even know what that's called. Canopy, I guess. We can then start attaching it onto here, and all you need to do actually is just get some, an acrylite glue again, and dab it in the middle, press it onto the branch, and it should hold there pretty nicely. Like I said, with my aquarium, that's all I've done, and that's been underwater for like a year, and they've still not broken off. I guess they might have gripped on a bit, but it shouldn't really be an issue in a dry enclosure anyway. So we'll just apply a generous amount of glue. Obviously I want the bigger ones to go on the larger branches. So once you start tearing these up, like you can see, that you can actually get like quite a cool matte layer. On this one I'm just going to affix the glue to the branch instead, it's probably easier. There's our finished tree. I'm pretty happy with that. I think this one looks coolest because it's kind of draping downwards, whereas these more fluffy ones are a bit messy, but that's alright. Came out as well as I expected, so that's really good. Happy with that. We'll get it in the enclosure and then take it from there. Right, I've scrapped the stone because the top didn't really fit very well with the stone, adding extra height to it, but it sits in there just fine. The branches kind of press against the edge of the enclosure, which holds it in place anyway. So now I can get some dirt in there and then get the tree in, and we'll add some texture at the bottom too. That all fits in there nicely. I kind of feel like it would have been nicer to have more of a canopy across the top, but that's good, that's okay. Plenty of hanging spots and nice greenery. It looks natural. I think we just need a bit more around the bottom now, just to liven it up a little. I've added some rocks and some contours on the bottom now, just to fill it out a little. I don't want to put too much in there because I think it will overcrowd it and take away from the main focal point being that tree. But I'm really happy with that. I'm excited to get somebody in there. I'm not sure who just yet. I do have another ghost mantis that probably needs a rehouse, but I don't know if it would really suit him because of the greens and he's very dark, so I'll have to have a think. Maybe my Hiradula membranacea, giant Asian mantis. Got another one of those that's growing quite big, so maybe I'll pop her in here, even though she has got an enclosure at the moment. But it'd be nice to have an inhabitant. And I'm just glad that I finally found a use for my balls.